the American dream. We're going to do it, too. As we restore our economy, we will also secure our borders. Over the past 4 years, Kamala Harris has orchestrated the most egregious betrayal that any leader in American history has ever inflicted on our people. She has eradicated our sovereign border, and she has unleashed an army of migrant gangs who are waging a campaign of violence and terror against our citizens all over our country. Kamala has imported an invasion of criminal migrants from prisons and jails, insane asylums and mental institutions from all around the world, from Venezuela to the Congo in Africa. The Congo, they're letting in tremendous numbers. They're letting out all their prisoners from the prisons in the Congo, and they're coming into the United States, and they're forcing them into our country. And we're accepting them because we're led by stupid people. And she has resettled. All of these people are being resettled. You know, of Springfield, a beautiful place, Springfield in Ohio. You heard about this. 52,000 people. They put in 32,000 illegal migrants. Think of it. So they wake up one day and they've almost doubled the size of their town. They can't get into their hospitals. And the mayor's a very nice person. He wants to just help them. But you can't, because the town is destroyed. And all he's looking for is interpreters, because on top of everything else, they don't even speak the language. And then you have Aurora in Colorado, and that's where you see these thugs from Venezuela. And she's resettling all of these people into communities, and in many cases, they prey on innocent American citizens. One of the deadliest and most vicious migrant gangs that Kamala has imported into our country is the savage Venezuelan prison gang called Tren de Aragua. These are young thugs that's taking over apartment complexes and unleashing a violent terror spree all over America. Towns all over America are petrified that they're going to be coming here, but they're in more than just Aurora in Colorado, and the governor's petrified of them. He doesn't know what to do. Now they're even taking over Times Square in New York. Let's take a look at these guys. This is a tough group.
Open borders, deadly consequences.
Border crisis, record-high crossings are putting a strain on cities across America. It is a full-blown invasion.
Armed Venezuelan gang members storming an apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado.
People talk about my good crime. This is what they're talking about.
San Antonio, Texas, just one of the latest cities to have apartment complexes taken over by members of the Venezuelan gang.
Biden and Harris have created a program to bring them in under humanitarian parole.
I am in favor of saying that we're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals.
More than 13,000 illegal immigrants convicted of murder have been released into the United States.
My 20-year-old daughter, Kayla Hamilton, was murdered in her own room. Kayla's murderer was apprehended by Border Patrol crossing illegally into the U.S.
Kayla's murderer had been improperly released into the United States.
Abolish ICE. Yeah, we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
More than a dozen people suspected of being Tren de Aragua gang members right here in San Antonio.
The gang members had been terrorizing the apartment complex.
New details in the murder of Laken Riley. The illegal immigrant suspect, who cops say committed the heinous murder, is a Venezuelan national.
He was paroled and released into the country by the Biden administration.
If they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened.
2 men investigators say are in the country illegally from Venezuela are charged with capital murder and the death of Jocelyn Nungaray.
Martinez Rangel wrapped his arms around Jocelyn's neck, took off her hands, and climbed on top of her. Later strangled Jocelyn to death and then tied up her hands and feet.
Court documents suggest a group of men arrested for beating and robbing a Dallas woman last month are members of a Venezuelan street gang.
The men threatened to cut off her fingers if she did not cooperate. Manuel Hernandez was booked by Colleyville police just 2 days earlier and released the day before the robbery.
A Peruvian gang leader who was wanted for 23 murders, who was arrested by Border Patrol near Roma, Texas, then released into America.
And this is what we have coming into our country. We're not going to have it any longer, that I can tell you. And we're going to have to get a lot of them out fast because we're not safe. And the United States has now become essentially an occupied country. We're an occupied country, talking about tens of thousands of people like this. But it will soon be an occupied country no longer. November 5th, 2024 will be Liberation Day in America. It's going to be Liberation Day. Under Kamala Harris, 13,099, this was Border Patrol numbers, illegal alien convicted murders. These are convicted murders in prisons all over the world, are on the loose in the United States. We've become a dumping ground for nations all over the world. They're dumping people into our country that they don't want because they're too dangerous and they're too expensive to take care of. It's very expensive having them in jail for 50 years. And they bring them to us. I said something yesterday, I thought it was terrible, and then I realized it was actually good. First time I ever said it. We become like a garbage can for the rest of the world. They're throwing all their garbage into our country. And we're not taking it, and they know we're not taking it. They don't want me to win this election, that I can tell you. Because we live with these people, and we'll get killed by these people. These are dangerous people. These are really dangerous people. There's nothing you're going to do about it to make them less dangerous. Immediately upon taking the oath of office, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history. And I will rescue every town across America that's been invaded and conquered. They've been conquered. These towns have been conquered. And we will put these vicious and bloodthirsty criminals in jail, or we'll kick them the hell out of our country and fast. And to expedite removals of Trenday Aragua and other savage groups and gangs like MS-13, one of the most violent gangs in the world. In Long Island, for whatever reason, they go to Long Island. 2 young girls, 16 years old, were walking to school, and they were captured by these animals, and they don't use guns because they're not painful enough. They use knives, and they cut the girls up into little pieces, killing them both. And they paid a price, but you know what? They should have never been in our country. I will invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. We have to go back that far. Think of that. Because that's when they ran the country a little tougher. To target and dismantle every migrant criminal network operating on American soil. And if they come back into our country, it's an automatic 10 years in jail with no possibility of parole, 0 possibility. And I'm hereby calling for the death penalty for any migrant that kills an American citizen or a law enforcement officer. I will end catch and release. I will end all migrant flights. They fly them in here by the hundreds of thousands. They fly right over the borders. It's not even believable. I will outlaw sanctuary cities, and I will ban all welfare and federal benefits for illegals, and then they won't come. They won't come. Kamala Harris is so incompetent and so unfit that she's obviously disqualified from being president of the United States. Anybody that would have put up with this, she never even called. You know, the Border Patrol, they endorsed me last week. And in the endorsement, it was full-throated. And they've endorsed me every year. I mean, they're great because we had some great 4 years. We had it done. All they had to do is leave what we had, but they didn't want to do that. But the Border Patrol endorsed me. And endorsing me, they said, she is the worst there has ever been. She's not going to be allowed to destroy our country like she destroyed San Francisco and like she destroyed California. And you see what's happening there. Everybody does. And everyone knows it. But no one respects her. No one trusts her. No one takes her seriously, from humiliating our country in Afghanistan with Crooked Joe, to the war in Ukraine, to the nightmare on our border, to her inflation catastrophe, to her egregious hurricane response, which was worse maybe than even Katrina. Kamala Harris is a train wreck who has destroyed everything in her path. To make her president would be to gamble with the lives of millions of people. She would get us into a World War III guaranteed because she is too grossly incompetent to do the job. She's not going to be able to deal with President Xi or Putin or Kim Jong-un or anybody. And then all of your sons and daughters will end up getting drafted to go fight for a war in a country that you've never heard of. Our enemies are laughing at her. They're laughing at us. But if we win, our enemies won't be laughing anymore. I tell you, they're not going to be laughing anymore. They're not going to be laughing. Viktor Orban, he's the head of Hungary, a very powerful man, very strong man. They said, you bring back Trump, you're not going to have any more problems. When he was president, we didn't have any problems. Now, I wouldn't use this term, but he did. He said, China feared him. They were afraid of him. Russia feared him. They were afraid of him. Look what I did to Russia. I ended Nord Stream 2. Nobody ever heard of Nord Stream 2. Nord Stream 2 was a pipeline that covered all of Europe. I said, you mean we're protecting you through NATO and you're giving them billions of dollars a month for their energy? That's no good. I ended it. Boom. When Biden came in, he approved it. And then they say, oh, Trump was very friendly with Putin. No. Putin would say, this is not a great friendship, but I had a relationship. And, they're a nuclear country, so are we. And I'm going to get that war settled because millions of people are being killed. Far more people are being killed in that war than you think. October 7th would have never happened with Israel. Think of it. All those people would be alive. October 7th, it was a carnage. If we win, America will be feared and respected again. But we're not just running against Kamala. She means nothing, actually. She's purely a vessel. Has to be, right? You saw her on the town hall the other night with Allison Cooper. Did you see? This is Allison Cooper of CNN. No, Allison interviewed her. She couldn't answer a question. She was terrible. We can't have that running our country. She can't put two sentences together, just like we were not running against crooked Joe Biden. We weren't running against Biden. We're running against something far bigger and more powerful than them. They took his job away. They walked into his office and they just said, you're not going to be president anymore. He went through the system. And I guess I'll use their term. They were a threat to democracy, right? They took his president. They said, you're out. How about that? Crazy Nancy and a few people, they just said, you're out. But it's a big machine, which is a massive, vicious, crooked, radical left group of people that runs today's Democrat Party. They're vicious, they're smart, they're way left, they're communists, probably. Remember I said we will never be a socialist country, right? Remember? Because I like to say I was right about everything. I was right. We skipped socialism. We went down to communism. Remember? Right? I think that's, oh, he's saying it. The man down here is saying it. But this is the real group that we're fighting. We're fighting a group of, like an amorphous group of people that seem to be invisible, but they're not invisible. These are the people who are doing such harm to our country with their open borders policies, record-setting inflation, the Green New scam for $93 trillion. They want every building in Manhattan to not have windows anymore because they think it's environmentally friendly. It'd be very interesting. How do you sell an apartment? Let's see. I want to buy a beautiful apartment. It's got no windows, but it's environmentally friendly. No, these are sick people. But we're not going to let this bullshit happen any longer. We're going to have the biggest victory in the history of our country on November 5th, and we are going to make America great again, and we're going to do it fast. On top of it all, Kamala says she would do nothing differently from Joe Biden. She said it. No, I would do nothing differently. You know, we lost 325,000 children. Do you know that? Think of it. You never hear it from the fake news. They don't talk about it. They don't talk about the Afghanistan travesty. We lost 325,000 children. They're either dead, probably never be found again, sex slaves or slaves. And they were brought into our country through our open border. 325,000. That's big stadiums filled up many, many times. Take a look at this, please.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
I stood there on the tarmac watching you check your watch.
The chaotic and deadly U.S. evacuation from Afghanistan stunned Americans and the world and cost the lives of 13 U.S. soldiers.
Would you have done something differently?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
More than 13,000 illegal immigrants convicted of murder have been caught at the border and then released into the United States.
An Afghan national is in custody today after being accused of plotting an election day terrorist attack. The suspect entered the U.S. on a special immigrant visa.
Gut-wrenching new details in the murder of Georgia nursing student Laken Riley. The illegal immigrant suspect, who cops say committed the heinous murder, is a Venezuelan national who crossed the unsecured southern border back in 2022.
2 men investigators say are in the country illegally from Venezuela are charged with capital murder in the death of Jocelyn Nangaray.
A 5th illegal immigrant accused of attacking 2 New York City police officers over the weekend showed no remorse or regret.
Would you have done something differently?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
Only 18% say the economy is in excellent or good condition.
U.S. inflation has hit a new 40-year high, increasing by 9.1% over the financial year.
Authorities saying Train Day Aragua, which has been linked with more than 100 criminal investigations here in the U.S., has now been found operating its criminal enterprise in apartment complexes.
Were you the last person in the room? Yes.
So you get the picture. You get the picture. It's not a pretty one. Pennsylvania, if you want to end this disaster, you must get out to vote. Everybody here, I appreciate the ones that voted, but just get out to vote.